we go on to page 386. You will have, 4 minutes. This is a long passage. It goes into the second column on the first page of on page 386. And then we have 6 questions. So we will be on question number 70. I'll give you 4 minutes starting now. Okay, we'll stop there. I wanted to say first that I did look up brazen. I'd actually completely forgotten about this, but the original meaning, of course, just means made of brass. And then from there, there would be sounds made from brass instruments, which tend to be loud and potentially kind of harsh, like a gong or brass musical instruments. And that loudness and the fact that it kind of interrupts and goes over everything else um, made the brazen get a more metaphorical meaning of contemptuous boldness. That contemptuous is the word I was looking for when I was trying to describe how it's not just boldness, but it's boldness kind of with disregard for what other people or what other for whatever else is going on. So it's contemptuous boldness in the sense of contempt is kind of looking down on or thinking less of other things, and so it's boldness that puts the person who's doing it, prioritizes that person's actions ahead of other people's, at least in their own mind. So there you have it, brazen. Just figured I'd pass that along since I could. Anyway, the passage is about the testability of Milankovich's theory and how that's tested via this new measure of oxygen isotopes in ocean sediment. So mostly it's about how this newly kind of discovered ratio of the two isotopes of oxygen in ocean sediment allow us to gauge the relative amounts of land ice, which then allows us to tie, because it's in the sedimentary record, we can tie the amount of oxygen in the water to the amount of land ice, and because it's a continuous record, we can then figure out the approximate chronology and compare that to the Earth's orbit and see whether ice ages are actually caused by variations in the Earth's orbit or by something else. So the author, and again that key element, does the author recommend that we do anything? Not particularly, no. The author is not saying, hey, this new theory is awesome, or actually really in this case it's an old theory, it's the early 20th century. And the author isn't saying, hey, we should do a certain thing. It's really more of an explanation. So if we get a main idea question, something where the author is arguing for something isn't going to be likely to be true. Anyway, on to question number 70. In the passage, the author is primarily interested in, so here's our main idea question. Was the author interested in suggesting an alternative to an outdated research method? There is no outdated research method in the passage, so it's not A. Is the author interested in introducing a new research method that calls an accepted theory into question? We are not bringing an accepted theory into question. In fact, there isn't really an accepted theory mentioned in the passage. C, emphasizing the instability of data gathered from the application of a new scientific method. There's no instability. D, presenting a theory and describing a new method to test that theory. And that sounds a lot like what we have. There was Milankovich's theory in the early 20th century, and now we have a means to test that theory. We'll keep that one. E, initiating a debate about a widely accepted theory. Nope, there's no widely accepted theory, and there's certainly no initiation of debate. So that leaves us with D, presenting a theory and describing a new method to test that theory. I'm going to hit the right button this time because I have a lot of notes. Not saying I'm not going to accidentally delete my notes later on, but I'm going to try not to. It's good to have achievable goals. Question number 71. The author of the passage would be most likely to agree with which of the following statements about the Milankovitch theory? So, and my apologies to Milankovitch if I and his or her relatives if I am mispronouncing his name, but I think that's right. Anyway, the author of the passage would be most likely to agree, quote, is one of the formats of an inference question. And where do we hear about the Milankovitch theory? That's mostly the first paragraph, And then it's not mentioned again until the last paragraph. So in the first paragraph, we find out that the theory is untestable, and then in the last paragraph, the fourth paragraph, says that it is testable, and yeah, that it looks pretty good, and that the ice ages do, and we find out in the previous paragraph that it's tied to the Earth's orbit, but that there are other factors. That's what the fourth paragraph is. Okay, so the author would agree then. Would the author agree that A, it is the only possible explanation for the ice ages? Well, the author does go out of his or her way to explain that other factors like volcanic particulate matter in the atmosphere and things like that, other factors can contribute to ice ages. So clearly Milankovich's theory is not sufficient on its own. B, it is too limited to provide a plausible explanation for the ice ages despite recent research findings. The third paragraph really talks about how good this new research method with the oxygen isotopes is, and that the evidence so far really is quite strong in connecting the amount of land ice to points in the Earth's orbit. So it's probably not limited and probably not implausible. I mean, really, there's no reason to think that the author thinks it's implausible. C, it cannot be tested and confirmed until further research on volcanic activity is done. Well, it actually says outright in line 53, the advantage of the Milankovitch theory is that it is testable. Changes in the Earth's orbit can be calculated and dated by applying Newton's laws of gravity to progressively earlier configurations of the bodies in the solar system. So the author clearly would not agree that Milankovich's theory cannot be tested. D, it is one plausible explanation, though not the only one, for the ice ages. Right, well, basically on this one, you know, the whole passage is really about the Milankovitch theory and how it's now testable, and that so far the initial data that they've gotten is promising, but the author does go out of his or her way to explain that there are other factors that the Milankovitch theory does not account for, and that the this oxygen isotope business does nothing to tell us about volcanic particulates or variations in the amount of sunlight received by the Earth. And the author says the lack of information about other possible factors affecting global climate, i.e. other sources of ice ages, does not make them unimportant. So it suggests that the author thinks there could be other things going on. We'll keep that one and check E. It is not a plausible explanation for the ice ages, although it has opened up promising possibilities for future research. I think we see that the author does think that it is plausible. The third paragraph talks about how great the oxygen isotope thing is and how much it matches. That's for that tied to orbit thing there. It does match Milankovich's theory, so it is plausible. It's just it doesn't account for other things which clearly do affect climate. So it's not E, and it is D.